Hello, everybody. Today is March 23rd, and today we're doing government and you said robot? We're not
I
doing
said
robot,
robot.
right?
Yep.
Really? What a
You're shocked.
weird...
Kind of a
Oh,
lot
yeah,
of
I'm
robots.
shocked.
You're shocked by that.
I am.
Yeah, we just had a pretty average split this week. So, no short episodes this week. How exciting.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is it?
And a return to form of starting with the FCC. It's been a while because with a certain member of the FCC no longer there, they don't make as many headlines as they used to. It's weird. But they are still doing stuff. Unfortunately, this is one of those headlines that, like many of the headlines before it from the FCC, means nothing.
FCC fines two Texas telemarketers $225 million for making 1 billion robocalls. Yeah, the article points out the last time they had kind of a large fine. I mean, Ajit Pai did fine for robocalls. He seemed like he was kind of maybe a little bit against it. But they only managed to collect, what was it, like $6,000?
Out of 100 million.
Yeah, so...
Wow.
So, not a great track record. Now, Miss Rosenworcel here. She is a much more tolerable face of the FCC than the previous one for sure. But she is also saying that she has not ruled out criminal charges here.
Yeah. Seems like it should be criminal because the amount of robocall spam that we're all getting is just intolerable. Especially with
It really
spoofed
is.
numbers. I mean, it's like, how did that become the new normal?
I'm pretty sure that the Indian call center works one geographical area at a time
Yeah.
for spoofing. Because, and it's such a low rate of hits that the guy has learned my voice. And my setups for the using the restroom outdoors jokes that I set them up for every time, he's getting me before I get to it. He knows my voice now. It's a lot harder to do. Maybe I need to get a voice changer. But that's not the only thing that the FCC has ruled on. And this one, you might expect a big reversal from the Trump administration, but no.
FCC is moving toward barring even more Chinese telecommunications companies from selling their wares to U.S. companies to use in our communications infrastructure. The FCC is looking at this and presumably looking at this with some intelligence services and saying, that seems odd. Of course, in the business section, we're going to have a story about how Xiaomi won their court case on the block, but the circumstances of that are a little different.
Do you always read China Unicom as China Unicorn?
Yes, every
Yeah.
time. It's because of the way the letters, especially with like the
Yeah,
serifs,
the R in the end.
they blend together and make a ligature.
Words like Unicom just sound very 1984.
And then there's Unicron, the transformer that ate planets.
Oh.
Well, he needed raw materials. I mean,
He was a dick. The other thing that the White House has apparently finally noticed, I don't imagine that Biden himself understands this concept, but his aides might, and they are trying to get serious about it.
the White House, oh no. The White House weighs new cybersecurity approach after failure to detect hacks. Just, this is so disappointing on so many levels because, like, there's a committee that's going to get in here, and I just,
And who's it made up of?
people that have no idea.
And big tech companies. They're talking about privatizing some of this.
Just
Who's had the most leaks so far?
literally all the private companies.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're not doing any better than the government is.
I mean,
And that's terrifying.
technically, one of the biggest, the OPM hack, the one that I always go back to, that was a government hack, but technically that was the vendors. Like, that was the company's fault.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
technically, when you get down to it, like, how did this happen? Well,
I have a feeling
Competence is rewarded.
I have a feeling two things will happen. One, cybersecurity will not improve.
no.
And two, my taxes will go up.
Your taxes will go up and the cybersecurity will get worse.
Yeah, it could get
The
worse.
taxes are going up either way.
Only if you make more than 400,000, so they say.
Yeah.
No, the Trump
Right.
tax plan also sets us all to go up anyway in like a year anyway.
Yeah, it sunsets, which is a
We're
neat trick.
screwed either way. It doesn't matter who's in office.
Yeah, it's
Our
only
taxes go up and we get less benefits.
it's only for people who make more than 400,000 because they're going to stop spending right after this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. This one is terrifying, and it follows a trend. Now, previously, we talked a lot about license plates. There are a lot of companies reading license plates and selling that data. I mean, it's legal for now.
Don't forget about the driver's license data
Yeah, well, that was just straight from the government. So they've got that. But
and vehicle registration,
as we
also straight
enter,
from the government.
as we enter into a world where the telemetry on a car is more insane than ever. I mean, we've talked about Tesla, they're at the top of the heap there. They record everything and they send most of it back home. But also, we have new kinds of protocols for car-to-car communication. Your car is just going to be beaming out information about everything that you do. And guess what? Someone's recording it.
Cars have your location. This spy firm wants to sell it to the U.S. military. Now, that's the headline, but the company in question has really, really walked this back. They've said, we don't have any government contracts, and this is purely theoretical. But no, this is exactly what we've been warning you about. This is exactly what we've said forever.
Absolutely going to happen.
They have promotional material.
Yeah, they have a lot of promotional material. And
Not far enough to get to marketing.
yeah, it's like, look at this. Geolocate one vehicle over 25 million miles is shown here. I mean, this would be easy to find the drug runners that are running, the I-75 corridor. It would be trivial.
You think they're using the same car every time? No. They will beat this in a week. They just throw those cars away.
They'll beat this in a week, and yet it will be used for, political ends somehow. It's going to be abused.
Look at that spider web. And that really is already happening. And
Yeah.
they're just looking at all of it.
Now, if you don't believe that you can passively monitor this stuff, a lot of billboards actually, old school radio tuners in your car, when you tune to a certain station, it creates a little bit of a reflection in the antenna. There's a company that sells a thing for billboards that will measure that reflected signal to know what radio station you're tuned into. And it can even change the billboard. We saw other billboards that do license plate scanning, and it's like, oh, that's a BMW. Are you due for service? Because that's a 2008 BMW.
Well,
See, that was my
McDonald's.
stupid question that I had was like, if you have a really, really old car that doesn't have all the new tech bells and whistles, like, would they be able to track it as effectively? But obviously,
License plate scanning.
yes. Yeah.
Well, they can't track it the way these guys are tracking it because they're looking at a
Right.
lot more telemetry. But here's the thing, Krista. That's an excellent segue because when it comes time for you to buy a new car, are you going to buy another one that's like that?
You're not going to have a choice, pleb.
In fact, this almost guarantees high telemetry cars.
Yes.
Because it just goes hand in hand. You think any car company would make we're going to make an electric car, but
with crank windows.
yeah, with none of that new stuff. We're not going to bother with that. No, they're all going to be like that.
Chuck Schumer wants to replace every gas car in America with an electric vehicle. So this is going to go, they say that it's going to go even above and beyond that $7,500 tax credit. There's actually kind of a lot of details in here. This isn't just like puffery. Well, I mean, it probably is, but they've laid out a lot of detail here. We're going to have a story later that talks about, I think it was Ford is leaving out some of the electronic stuff in their cars, but, which is funny because it's like, oh, we're going to have the telemetry stuff and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, don't worry about that for gas mileage. But with these electric cars and the telemetry and stuff, think about like the scenario with Tesla. It's like, we know that they're collecting everything. I want you instead to think about the scenario with GM. Remember how we looked at GM and they were basically completely incompetent when it came to anything with modern technology? They got duped by the whole Nikola electric car thing. GM is just going to add, whatever, like the Huawei car telemetry box to their thing, and it is over. Like, goodness knows it is over when they do that. I mean, don't you think that's what's going to happen?
Well, I mean, there'll certainly be a time where they're scrambling for any chip they can get. In the long run, maybe not, but yeah.
I mean, if Huawei showed up and was like, look, just put our box in your car and you get all this telemetry and car-to-car communication stuff and you don't have to think about it or engineer it, they're going to be like, all right, sounds good.
I don't know about Huawei because I think the GM board reads the news enough to be like, oh, I don't know about Huawei. But if it was somebody just as bad who didn't have the name recognition, absolutely.
It'll be like Sing Sung Electro Company Limited, which is just a DBA of Huawei.
A subsidiary of Huawei Corp. All right, yeah. So they will certainly, to put it more succinctly, GM will never favor privacy over cost.
Never.
That's the bottom line.
How do we know that's true? Look at OnStar. Look at the horrible privacy octopus that is OnStar. Oh my gosh, it's terrible.
How do you know that's true? You just look at the culture we live in. Cost is always the deciding factor.
And when it comes to privacy, there are some organizations and some people who are fighting for it. They're not winning, but they're fighting. And there are some companies who might be pretending to fight. And even just that pretense, which really puts them in a better position, angers so many of the other companies, and they have so many lobbying dollars that you get this headline.
Reuters has this exclusive. Google's privacy push is drawing U.S. antitrust scrutiny, according to sources. So the premise for the Justice Department seems to be this. Google is in a position to undermine advertisers' businesses by changing the way that cookies work on the internet. It's going to deprive advertisers of the information that they need in order to make decisions and do advertising in the first place. And since Google also does advertising, isn't this by definition an antitrust violation? Because Google is no longer competing with the advertising companies to actually advertise. And Google has their own technologies that will replace these technologies, and ad companies are not in a position to do the same. It's an interesting argument.
Now, Google's fix for cookies might be good, but a lot of people would argue that it's just making you more comfortable with the spying. It's just putting a nicer skin on the spying and maybe giving Google that inherent advantage. But this is not the first time they've done that. Google figured out a long time ago how to give you more feeling of security while not actually giving you any security. And that might be coming back to haunt them.
Google must face $5 billion lawsuit over tracking private internet use, judge rules. Judge finds the tech giant did not notify users that their data could still be collected in incognito mode. There's a lot of history with this too. Like, remember the stories that we've done where the Google engineer sent the internal email that's like, hey, is this really the best design for this? You know, I'm a Google engineer and I had trouble figuring out the privacy menus to toggle this or toggle that. Incognito mode basically means it's not going to show up in your history, your web history, if you have that turned on, but it doesn't mean it's not still logging it.
Yeah, you might be left out of that information, but Google is never left out of that information. And so people might do that and think that Google doesn't know what they're doing on the web, but they absolutely do. So I don't know if that's worth $5 billion. They can probably go into the user agreement and the documentation and be like, it's all right here. They knew what they were getting into if they read this, and that would be true.
Not unlike the Google engineer complaining about the obtuse settings.
Yeah. They're there. Here's a paragraph on page 7,000. Explains it in detail. Krista, you're in the new house, and have you started setting up this dream garden and all that stuff? What's your status right now?
Status right now is we're kind of in a holding pattern. We've had some nice weather this week, but we got a bit of a cold snap last night. I have radishes, cilantro, and parsley seeded right now, and I have little tiny shoots of radish coming up right now.
That's impressive. Now, what is your mitigation plan for EMP attacks at the new
I
house?
have none right now.
Oh my God, Krista.
I may have looked at Faraday cages on Amazon before, and then I was like, that's a little too high-level paranoid even for me.
Well, maybe it is and maybe it's not.
I've got one.
Oh.
U.S. Air Force is guarding against electromagnetic pulse attacks. Should we worry? I don't know.
Yeah. I go back and forth. I'm like, that seems so unlikely. But then I'm like, oh, but what if it happens, though?
They make a compelling argument in both directions in this article. Props to Ed Gent. He played both sides of it very well. And some people are saying it's probably never going to take out the entire grid, but other people saying it will be dead in a week.
The thing, I thought he did a good job with this too, but the thing that I always go back to is what was the event from the 1800s that set the telegraphs on fire even when they were unplugged?
The Carrington event.
Yes.
Was,
So
solar flare.
there's a lot of papers that are like, what if we had a Carrington event today? And there was a really good one from just 5 or 6 years ago that talked about how the switching transformers are not prepared for that. And like right now there's like a weather station, like a space weather station, and we preemptively like turn stuff off so it won't die. So if there's a Carrington event, we literally could not manufacture the power transformers fast enough to get the grid back to normal within 2 years.
That's the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night.
I guess we're going to have to, denuclearize all the countries of the world and destroy the sun. It's the only way to be safe. This is interesting. We've done so many stories on this, and I guess I've always just sort of glossed over this, but the U.S. government has NTSA, that's the association, and NTSB, that's the board. And they don't get along.
Oh, right.
What are we doing?
Well, the association was created to cancel out the board because auto
Maybe.
manufacturers, they didn't like seat belts. Is how this came to be.
But the NTSB, that's the board, has come out with some new recommendations on what not to do with self-driving cars. And they point at what not to do by referencing Tesla over and over and over.
NTSB cites Tesla to make the case for stricter autonomous driving regulation. The agency says the automaker has been testing an unfinished driver assist technology on public roads. And the guy stopped short of saying, look, we want innovation in this space, but you've had a very long time to get this buttoned up, and it doesn't seem like it's really getting a lot better. And he's kind of got a point. There's a lot of Tesla fans that say they're on, they're at level 3, 4, 5 autonomous driving, but it's barely level 2.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of arguments about the number of accidents that Teslas are involved in and the number of accidents that all other cars are involved in, and they're being fairly minuscule in comparison. But the worry is not how many accidents, the worry is who's driving at the time.
Yeah.
Is the robot driving? And maybe we are just seeing the worst of the headlines, but they're pretty bad and they're consistent, because how many times have we seen this so far? It's got to be 7, 8, maybe double digits at this point.
I've got to think that if you look at the people on like peopleofwalmart.com and you turn one of those loose with a Tesla, that's going to be a worse result than a non-Tesla vehicle with no autopilot capabilities.
Yeah, but you're taking the very lowest of us.
Well, as Tesla becomes more mainstream, it seems like this is only going to get worse unless the software improves. Or is disabled. If you, it's like you can't. It's like, I'm sorry, you took your hands off the wheel 3 times this month. No more autopilot for you.
But this one in particular, I feel like this should be one of the first recognition subroutines that you put in the Tesla, right?
Though, to figure out if you're a horrible person.
No, to figure out if there are flashing lights in front of you.
Right.
That's the big one.
Tesla faces second NHTSA probe in Michigan this month. A Tesla operating an autopilot struck a police car early Wednesday morning because the software is terrible.
Yikes.
Oops.
So this happens a lot because these emergency workers are actually trained. When there's something going on that shoulder, they park a little bit in the road to force the traffic away from the accident. It makes sense from a public safety standpoint. It might hurt traffic a little bit, but it keeps people from hitting those cars or debris in the road or whatever.
They'll also park at an angle, so if you do manage to hit them, you'll glance off of it.
And the Teslas just don't seem to care about that flashing vehicle.
That was my lane.
Good luck, everybody else.
What if the software, it's not that it doesn't see it or recognize it, it's just obstinate.
Yeah.
And it's like, you don't belong here. This is mine. In some state news, Utah's a weird
This
little,
should have gone in nonsense.
a little weird place, a little salty part of our country that's different than all the rest of them.
Sorry, Utah.
And they have a real problem with something the rest of the country is. I mean, it's running our economy at this point, right?
It basically is, yeah. The AP is reporting this headline: Utah campaign against porn marches on with the phone filter plan. So, yeah, that's probably not going to work out well for them. One of the lawmakers on this, I forgot his name, but it's like he won't come out and say if he supports it or not because he doesn't want to make anybody angry, which is BS.
And there's definitely, I got to think that there's a lot of money, because it's the Mormons, it's the Church of Latter-day Saints, and I got to think there's so many lobby dollars going in here, and he just like, he can't turn that down, but he knows how insane this
It's
is.
probably pandering.
So the thing about this is when you buy a new device, what they want is that device has to have the filter on by default, and you have to purposely opt out of it. And it'll probably be one of those Google dark pattern things to try to get you not to do that.
It's not your phone. You remember that, citizen.
So it's not going to actually, what percentage drop in porn use do you think there would be from that?
Negative 7%.
Yeah,
it'll go up.
Like, it's not going to do anything.
This is the forbidden URL.
So good luck with that, I guess. I mean, you can get around it trivially. It's not going to help, but it's going to make people angry because they don't like that kind
You
of
could
stuff.
just download TikTok and probably, you know.
Oh yeah, Reddit and Twitter both said that they're not going to block that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So they'll probably hire somebody in Utah to go through every tweet.
Or they're going to have like Smokey and the Bandit style smuggling. Like, I got to buy one of those Arizona cell phones.
Well, it's like the North Korea thing, where you balloon in drops of DVDs and stuff. Engagement Challenge, what would be the name of that company? The Airdrop Adult Material Company. I'm sure you can come up with some good ones. Krista, you probably should have 3D printed your house. I mean, I don't know why you didn't.
Probably. Yeah.
But if you feel like you made a terrible mistake and you're ready to change that, you could just sell it and move to California.
Around here, well, you'd have to go out in the country, but around here, this would be forbidden because some part of it, the local builder lobby has forbidden any prefab components going into a house.
It's true. I looked up prefab homes very briefly, and you can't build them around here.
Wow,
Rip.
that sucks.
Yeah, because these are cool.
Do you know what's funny about that is there are absolutely, and a lot of them,
Yeah.
just like little knocked together tin and corrugated steel and
This is
remnant
way
wood
better.
houses in
Yeah.
eastern Kentucky, and they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And
This will be
nobody
so
cares.
much better.
Yeah.
California will soon be home to the world's first 3D printed housing community, and it's powered by solar and a Tesla Powerwall. Oh, I wonder if we could get a federal grant. I would be all about, you know, trying to help oversee some project like this in the poor part of eastern Kentucky.
You
to,
know
like-
what? You would do that, and then you'd go back 6 months later and be like, let's see how they're doing. And they would all be meth labs.
I was gonna say all the copper would be stripped out.
That would be very depressing.
That-
the copper's inside concrete. I mean, that would at least keep them busy.
But this stuff is made out of a material. I can't remember what they called it. It's not wood. It's some kind of advanced polymer.
It's like, I thought it is like a foamy concrete kind of a thing.
And it doesn't rot. And the bonding to the surrounding materials is supposed to be way better. So these should hold up over time more.
The floor plans are all about 1,400 square feet, but if you need more room than that, there's like a little add-on building that'll just go out the back of it, I guess. That's
It's
That's another two
building.
bedrooms.
That's kind of
So-
cool if houses just became modular.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah,
you know
that's
what?
what prefab is.
I did really well this year. Let's pop a second floor on.
Yeah. And
The one
you know,
thing I
Go ahead.
here you go, Wendell.
go ahead.
I was gonna say the one thing I'm curious about with these houses, at least in all the photos, is that they have these very flat roofs, and obviously that's like for the solar panels. Would that do well in a climate like ours, where you have a lot of rain?
No, I
No.
think it's just unique to California where they are.
If you just pitched it 15 degrees, it would be fine for our area. And as with all things, I'm obsessed with my overhang. So give it an overhang, and it'll be fine.
But they probably could also just print the walls with that lean.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it wouldn't be a big deal for them, I don't think. I remember during the pandemic when we first got talk of, you know, travel restrictions and vaccines and something like that, they fell all over themselves to say that, no, there's never going to be like a digital passport. It's not going to be the mark of the beast. Don't worry.
And yet,
We would never restrict you for not participating in this. That's crazy.
the EU plans to roll out a travel certificate before summer. It's like a travel certificate. It's not unlike the bowling certificate you get for, you know, hanging out with your friends Wednesday night. It's like, oh, look, Bob, you're the best bowler. Here's your bowling
Well,
certificate.
except it'll be digital.
Here's your digital bowling certificate that requires this really invasive app that's on your phone. It's made by the lowest bid contractor that's probably selling your location data to that company that we heard about that was tracking vehicle movement.
But the thing about it is, it's not just for the vaccinated. It's also for the recently tested. What does that do?
Well,
Recently tested negative.
yeah.
No, yeah, but I'm saying, like, that doesn't stop me from getting infected on the way to the airport.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it helps a little bit, I'm sure. But I think what they're doing is just like they're desperately trying to get their tourism dollars back.
It's going
It's
to take a
killing
while.
So, yeah, let us know if you've got a digital EU vaccine passport.
Neat.
How's that experience? And in France, they were one of the first places where the court case for this new Google thing has actually played out to the point where someone's made a decision.
The cookie thing. We're talking
And,
about the cookie replacement
yeah.
thing.
The flock thing. And it's kind of surprising, I guess. I would think that France would have gone the other way on this.
Yep. France refuses to block Apple's big privacy changes. So, basically the argument from the ad industry that we heard about in the US, where it's like, hey, they're interfering with our business. It's a very similar argument that has been put forth in France. But France has said, yeah, Apple is in a monopoly position here, but we don't see this as ultimately harming consumers. So this is fine.
It goes back to that whole thing. Well, actually, it's the reverse, right? Because EU law is supposed to be for the competitor.
Right.
And US law is supposed to be for the consumer. So this is kind of a weird decision for them to make.
Yeah.
Also, if you are a gig worker in Spain, everything's about to change. I kind of doubt that, don't you?
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to mean all that much to them.
Yeah. Gig economy shift. Spain makes delivery riders employees. So this was Deliveroo and the other one. And it's like, hey, you guys are employees if you're delivering food.
So they got to have some benefits, and they have to have all the various things, unemployment, I guess, and things like that they previously had no access to. It's probably going to hurt their pay. But it might be good for them overall.
Probably good for them overall.
In China, the richest man has already been having a pretty bad year.
Showed up as a paper cutout animatronic.
Did he disappear
He
in
did.
2020 or 2021?
It was 2020. He was gone for like 3 or 4 months.
And then he came back, and he was oddly quiet, and he's been oddly quiet since then. But I suppose it's not over.
Beijing asks Alibaba to shed its media assets. Under Jack Ma's leadership, the company built a formidable portfolio of media holdings. So this is social media, print media, television studios, distribution, magazines, and some other things. The article breaks it down. There's like 2.6 billion in something, and then there's online. There's like a Weibo thing, which is worth like 5-point-something billion.
Well,
plus
that
the
was
other
just the
stuff.
publicly traded stuff.
Yeah.
They didn't know about the privately held stuff.
They said that China didn't specify exactly what it meant by media assets, but I can tell you it's literally everything.
They do not like how powerful this man is.
Yes.
And they see this as a way to try and gain more power by swaying the people. And it might have been that.
Yeah.
But it ain't going to be that anymore. However, they don't really take a lot of half measures in the Communist Party.
No.
They go all the way.
Alibaba's browser has been deleted from Chinese app stores. That was the UC browser. Not allowed anymore in China.
Now it's the CU browser. See you later.
That's why people subscribe to this channel.
They did not give any concrete reasons. They just don't
Jack
like it.
Ma, obviously.
Yeah, they're just punishing Jack Ma, let's be honest. Do you think he's like daydreaming about just like quitting?
No, because he
Like,
could have.
screw it, take my money and just
I mean,
leave. and-
yeah, he could
and
do
retire.
that. He could have done that at any time in the last decade, probably, right? I mean,
Now, I want everybody that's watching this program to remember this action. So when we talk about Apple and Google doing business in China with their app stores, and then being asked to do something that we might look at and say, "Oh, I don't know if we would do that." Look at this. It's just like, oh yeah, we've been asked to remove that. Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
and it's honestly, I'm shocked it took him this long.
Yeah. So, encrypted messaging app Signal appears to be blocked in China. It only had about 500,000 downloads in China, but that was enough for the Great Firewall to take notice. It still works through a VPN for now.
Yeah, that won't last long. Plus, you
Yeah.
probably went on a list
Yeah.
if you were using it. That's going to be more dangerous than just not getting access to it. Xiaomi, meanwhile, has won a surprising ruling, and honestly, if you look at the rule of law, this does make a lot of sense because they really never got their day in court.
Xiaomi wins a court ruling blocking U.S. ban on the smartphone maker. So, a U.S. district judge has temporarily put a halt to the ban, siding with Xiaomi in a lawsuit. And basically, what happened here was the only evidence that the U.S. presented was that one of their CEOs won an award from the Chinese Communist Party, saying you have provided tremendous service to your country. And that's it. And I was like, oh well, let's just put him on the ban list.
That guy was just picking up trash.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, come on, guys.
You saved the pandas. Is this the reward you get for sponsoring some pandas?
You saved the pandas, but then you radicalized them toward Western ideas as well.
Oh,
You must be destroyed.
The funding came from Indiegogo. We can't have that.
The pandas are listening to rap music and talking about owning property.
Is that like the controversy in the late 80s where like the Hells Angels were funding children's hospitals or something?
Well, they're doing other stuff too. Just like the Communist Party.
Yeah,
were.
that's just that's some sprinkles on top of the other things they did.
It's like, oh, we're going to be able to save all the children with cancer. Wait, the funding came from Hells Angels? Oh, I don't know if we're okay with this. So why would you ever? I mean, just, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, I always love those headlines where it's a young girl with cancer loses all her hair and she's embarrassed to go to school, so the angels will escort her to the school and they make a big deal about it. And they'll show them and it's all like this feel-good story, but you think it's like, I got stabbed a guy in the neck yesterday. I know
Yeah.
it did. I don't know. Can you separate the two? Maybe you can. But one thing that you can't separate anymore is Russian apps from your phone if you live in Russia, because once again, big tech companies will bow to whatever government pressure they're given.
Apple will abide by Russian law offering government-approved apps.
Did I say Google?
Users will be able to opt out of installing them, according to a Russian newspaper. That newspaper was incorrect.
Oh, did you find something that said that wasn't true?
No, but I mean, I just know how it's going to go.
They claim that you still can. Now, the argument here, what Russia wants is when you boot that phone for the first time, you are met with a series of prompts. It's like, do you want Russian spy app? I think you do. And they claim you can still opt out of it, but you have to go through that whole song and dance.
Your location will be immediately sent to Putin, though, as soon as you opt out.
And it's going to take a picture of you.
A security detail has been dispatched to your location to help you reevaluate your decision.
This one, I've mixed feelings about this. Because if this happened, it would probably help a lot with the GPU shortage.
Yeah.
On the other hand, it would probably cost me a ton of money. So,
Reuters reports that India is going to propose a cryptocurrency ban penalizing miners and traders. So the fines could be up to $10,000 US, which is quite a lot of money in India. And even if you're just holding, that's not allowed. They are going to roll out their own digital currency, though. Don't worry.
yeah, and it's
You
going to be
hold-
the same bunch that created that biometric database and all that other stuff that leaked like a week later. They're going to give you a little bit of a grace period, but after that, it could be, I haven't decided yet, but they could be a criminal charge. You could do jail time just for having Bitcoin.
I thought India, didn't we discuss a story just like this? Was it about India or was it a different country that was like, oh, they're totally going to get rid of Bitcoin?
No, it was they've been moving in this direction for
Yeah.
some time. It was super restricted, but now this is like turning it up a notch.
And all the countries in that area have similar cultures, although if you said that to them, they'd be very angry. Because one country in particular that doesn't get along with India, but kind of plays by the same playbook, is Pakistan.
Pakistan bans TikTok again over immoral and objectionable videos. So TikTok was getting popular in Pakistan. Somebody looked at what you could get on TikTok and freaked out. Kind of like our Utah.
The Utah of the East. So yeah, a bad time if you're a Pakistani TikTok star. I don't know how many of those there were. There got to be at least one, right?
Engagement challenge. Identify yourself.
You know, I didn't put the headline in here, but I was reading a story about how the biggest stars on TikTok are set to become billionaires.
Wow.
They're getting millions per sponsored TikTok.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Missed the boat on that one.
And I watched a couple of them, and it's just, I mean, it's a young, very attractive girl, but she's just lip syncing and like living her life, and she's
Yeah.
bad at it.
And they usually do like dances and stuff too, but everyone does the same dance.
And somehow, that's worth millions of dollars. Out of touch, folks. I'm out of touch. Sometimes living in this harsh, unpredictable world, I just want to crawl back into the womb. And I think that's probably what leads to opiate addiction, because that's how people describe that feeling. But maybe someday soon, I won't have to actually take opiates to have that feeling, because I could have a robot help me with that problem.
Scientists grow mouse embryos in a mechanical womb, according to the New York Times. They got some pictures here.
Yeah, we can't show them to
They
you.
were, normal heartbeat, 170 beats per minute, blah, blah, blah. So far, so good.
They made like a nutrient paste that the embryos live in. And when we say embryos, at this point we're talking about that's just a little slush in there. The little bean has not formed yet.
Oh, the picture you could see a beating heart in the picture.
But that's when they get to day 11, when there's a bean,
Oh,
it doesn't work anymore because there's no blood. You have to have blood.
well, that's just a
Dump some mouse blood in there. Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
mouse blood and a teeny tiny mechanical electromagnetic pump.
Why even bother with mouse blood? Just like when you're cleaning your chicken for dinner, just save that blood.
Give me my biology degree.
It turns
I
out
solved that problem.
the Mayans with the blood sacrifice were more technologically advanced than we thought.
Yeah, so before long, we will be having the argument of what are the ethics of completely mechanically raised mice and then dogs and then people.
Oh, I've
What
kind of
if-
already started with the people with CRISPR or whatever.
Yeah, but there's still a human connection there. What if
Yeah.
we come up with a completely artificial raised human and they end up like Data? Like they have some emotions, but they're all wrong.
Then there may be hope for our society.
We already have those people. This headline is going to do something very amazing. This is going to retroactively give a lot of credence to some poorly written police dramas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
But then there's a dark side to that.
this never existed, but now it does.
Adobe's Photoshop Super Resolution made my jaw hit the floor. So there's an enhance thing. It's like zoom in and enhance. It's like there's not enough pixels. It uses AI to fill in the gaps. It's like, oh, I know what this is. I can just look at this and fill this in with some AI. It's not going to be super noisy.
I looked at all the images in this article and I didn't like. It's such a bizarre concept to me that I was like, that can't be real, and yet it is.
So
it's real.
here's how this is going to be misused, because this was already happening. Police are going to take this. They're going to take like poor security footage, and they're going to zoom in and enhance to the point that like the police sketch artist, is literally photoshopping in the suspect that they think is for the crime, and then they're going to ask the witness, like, is this the person? And they're going to be like, yeah, that's totally the person, because there's still not enough detail in the source image, and a lot of innocent people are going to go to jail.
All
But-
I'm hearing when I read this article was when a client gives me a crappy photo, I might be able to use it instead of having to go back and forth with them explaining I can't make their little tiny iPhone image bigger.
Yeah, I suppose it could be useful for that. In a real world, like, what does this actually do for us? I think print is the big thing here. If you want to
Yeah.
print an old picture, you can bring it up to print quality pretty easily with this. So that's it could be good for, you want to Photoshop in your dead relatives to the family photo, sharpen them up. That could work. That started the robot section, in case you didn't notice, because it's about machine learning. But these robots may save us from a terrible thing. Now, the darkness here is why they're doing this. Because it turns out DDT we used to use for pest control turned out maybe a little bit damaging to the human body when it gets into the groundwater and stuff. So we said, you know what?
Hey, brain cancer.
No more DDT. And the companies that used a lot of DDT, they had a lot of it. They had warehouses full of stuff. And all of a sudden you got to get rid of it, but it's literally poison and that's expensive. So what they did, and these guys claim for the better part of, was it 40 years?
Yeah.
For 40 years, once a day or once a week, was it? They took a container ship out into the ocean and just dumped the whole ship worth of barrels into the ocean.
What the fuck? Like, who does that?
So what do you do about that? Well, maybe something.
Gizmodo reports that underwater Roombas are helping start the cleanup of a decades-old toxic waste dump along the California coast.
Yeah. You know what they didn't say in this story? That someone was going to prison.
No, it was technically allowed under the Reagan EPA.
Like, surely at the very least, the companies that did this, like, could they at least pay for the development of the Roombas that had to do this, or like?
I
It's
don't think
changed
they
hands
did.
3 times, and the original people are all gone because
Probably
it's a
dead.
shell game.
I mean, it was 40 years.
Yeah,
Yeah, but still, damn.
it's not unlike we had a CRT TV recycling program in the 90s, and so a lot of companies took a bunch of money from the government to recycle TVs, but what that actually was just putting them in a warehouse.
I would love to see an in-depth interview with the captain of the boat, or the guys handling the barrels. Like, did they know? Somebody had to know.
Somebody had to know.
And how did they reconcile that when they went home at night?
That's how you end up with the guy in Jaws talking about the glassy doll eyes in a shark, and he gets weird sometimes.
Quint.
Yeah. It's like that, but it's like, I just let the barrels go. Just
that actor may have actually been drunk that entire time, and that's why that's so good. But he is a hell of an actor. So we've talked a lot about self-driving cars, and of course, we just saw one smash into a police cruiser. We've seen some terrible things. We saw the guy crash into the divider. Of course, the driving under the trucks is a constant problem with them, and we are not at level 5, which is the level we need, supposedly, to trust them, which makes me think this headline is a really, really, really bad idea.
This startup wants to fill the skies with cargo-filled robot planes. Reliable Robotics has been flying Cessnas through a mixture of autonomy and remote control. FedEx is, for one, a believer.
So yeah, this guy he wanted to be a pilot, and he dropped out of pilot school, and he went to work for which tech company was it? It was one of the big ones, Tesla maybe. And then he went back to pilot school, and he was like, hey, you know what? I can make this a robot.
It's, on the one hand, like thinking about it from the autopilot side, a lot of the airplanes, not the small ones, not a Cessna, but a lot of the autopilot in the larger planes is really very good, and there is a lot of room in the sky. But on the other hand, increasing the number of Cessnas in the air by a factor of 100 for package delivery?
Yeah, I'm not worried about the ability of the robot. I'm worried about just the massive air congestion and the maintenance on these planes. When Bob's Cargo and Shipping starts a fleet of 20 planes, how confident are we in Bob?
I'm more excited about the writing the screenplay for the Mad Max style drama where two of these planes collide in like rural eastern Kentucky, and then there's a Mad Max style race to get and recover the Amazon goods that were part of the crash.
Yeah, that could be good. Or well, it's a combination. It's a survival movie because both of the some people were on those planes. Like, it's like one of those stories similar to Tom Hanks.
Castaway.
Yeah, Castaway.
Hey.
Where it's like, oh, hey, let me just get this empty seat. I got to get over to San Francisco. They're like, okay, it's a cargo plane, but we got one empty seat. And both planes were like that, and they go down, and it's like this competition between FedEx and UPS for survival. But they also crashed into a marijuana field, and the people are coming to get the goods. So you have all these different forces at play here.
They don't want to kill him, but it's a little bit like Misery where she breaks his ankles. You can't talk.
I just want to get home, and that's just like all the protagonist says the entire time. He has a photo of his wife in his little pocket on his shirt, even though no one carries photos like that anymore.
And
He's
it's
a
funny
man from a different time.
It's funny because they're not used to the hills at all, so they're just going through all this survival stuff, and they're it's really harrowing, and they're eating bugs, and they're setting their own broken bones, and then the camera just pans over a little bit, and there's a Dollar General because that's how we live. Myanmar, I'm never going to learn to pronounce it. I'm sorry. And I get conflicting answers from the chat, so we're hopeless.
Yeah,
but they had a coup, and it's interesting because when the ownership of a country unexpectedly changes hands, it raises a lot of questions on things that belong to that country that aren't in that country.
Reuters has the article, Myanmar's first satellite held by Japan on space station after the coup. So it's being held on board the International Space Station following the coup, while Japan's space agency and a Japanese university decide what to do with it, because...
Now, they had a contact at a university in Myanmar. He's gone. No one knows where he is. He was disappeared after the coup. So they don't really have anybody that they can contact to talk about this satellite. So they're
You
not
just
sure.
call the government. Just
But
hey.
They don't know who that is.
No, you just call. You just call a random number online, and you're just like, "Hey, I need to talk to the government."
No, this is McDowell's. You're looking for McDonald's. We've got the golden arcs. They've got the golden arches.
So yeah, they're like, we could deploy it, but now we're afraid that this new military government is going to use it to track people, and we don't want to be a part of that. So what do we do? I don't know what you do.
It's going to be a very expensive paperweight for a while.
I'd put it on eBay.
Own your own piece of a space station. Buy a space station for your loved one today.
Although it's already on the space station, so the shipping to get it back here would be several $1 million. It's one of the, you put
Before
a,
Musk buys it.
it's one of those auctions where you really go out of your way not to mention the shipping till they get to the cart. Hope they
Oh.
don't notice. And finally, a new food prep robot. I always get excited about food prep robots, and this one does a very specific task, but it appears to do it incredibly well.
New soba noodle making robot at a Japan train station eatery can cook 150 servings an hour. Now, that sounds exciting, but then you read and it's like, well, that's about how much a human cook could do. So this cooking stall, I guess at peak would have 4 employees working. They're now down to 3 because this cooks the noodles and then puts them in an ice bath because that's how you do soba noodles.
And I'm not sure how it does this. I wish there was a video. Apparently, cooking these noodles creates like a foamy layer of smut on top of the water. It scrapes that off somehow.
Oh, neat.
Oh. That's probably just like an arm with like a
2 arms,
know.
in fact.
yeah, and it just
Oh, I still want to see
doesn't
how
have
it
to worry
does it.
about getting burnt.
Doesn't ever get tired. So they've replaced 25% of their workforce with a robot. Neat.
I don't know if I've ever had soba noodles.
I think I have.
I have, but not, it wasn't anything like, this is amazing, I have to have this, but it seemed like a perfectly reasonable staple food. The noodles is just a base. You put a lot of stuff on them, and you can completely change.
That's what the other employees still do.
Yeah.
Yeah. They actually season the noodles so they taste good and they're not just cooked well.
Yeah, the noodles are kind of a filler. They're like potatoes. They take on whatever you're...
Well, it's
Yeah,
like pasta,
cooking
but I'm just saying soba noodles in particular. I don't know if I've ever. I don't know the flavor of those.
It's, like when you have like perfectly al dente spaghetti, it's like that, but even more al dente, and like even more, like the cross-section of the noodle is considerably more.
What's the name of the...
Thicker.
I think it's a noodle. It's the Japanese dish where they beat it with a hammer. Engagement challenge.
All right, what do we got for tomorrow?
Tomorrow we got business and I think it's social.
Getting down to business with all these semiconductor shortages. Just hang on to
Whoa.
literally everything until 2022 because OMG WTF.
And put it in your Faraday cage in case the EMP comes.
If you have solar and the EMP comes, you're going to be like a royalty.
Wouldn't you still be
Or
screwed in that case?
You're going to be a fire victim.
It depends. It depends on how bad and where the EMP is.
Yeah.
Huh.
All right.
Build up your emergency kits. We'll see you guys tomorrow.